Well, hello everybody and welcome to the channel. My name's Thomas, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about how I've just managed to acquire Spanish nationality in under 5 weeks. Yes, that is right. I got it in 36 days it took. So buckle in and I'm going to explain everything and what I'm planning to do with this newfound status. Okay, where do I begin with all this? Spanish nationality wasn't really on the cards for me until pretty much this year, okay? And just to give you a bit of backstory, I have a Spanish grandmother, or had a Spanish grandmother. She's not alive anymore. And that was my dad's mum, my yaya. And she married my grandfather, who was English, and they had my dad and his siblings while they were in England. So my dad's whole life, he has been a English citizen, but during his childhood, they would go between England and Spain, I think for holidays and visiting family, etc., etc. My dad's had Spanish influence around him his whole life. He speaks Spanish, has spoken Spanish since he was very young. However, his mum, my grandmother, never inscribed him or got him registered with the Spanish birth registry. Therefore, for his whole life, he's not been considered a Spanish national at all. However, because his mum is Spanish, he was able to opt in for that. So that's one of the laws. If you are born to a Spanish national or an originally Spanish national, you have entitlement to claim it. Or if your parent registers you at birth, you are then a Spaniard by origin at birth. But yeah, people in my dad's case can claim it later in life if they wish, which kind of gets to the heart of where this whole obtaining Spanish citizenship thing started. And around 10 years ago, I'm in Australia now. So my dad moved out to Australia, met my mum, had me and my sister, and that's how I'm here in Australia. But about 10 years ago, my dad actually moved away to Europe with my stepmom. They had enough of Australia and they wanted to go and do a bit of traveling. They were getting to near retirement age and they thought, screw it. We've both got EU passports. She has an Irish passport. He had his British one. They both had freedom of movement throughout the EU, and off they went to, travel around and country hop a little bit. And then when the whole Brexit thing happened, my dad was actually in disbelief. He really didn't think that it was going to get over the line. Therefore, he didn't put any backup plans in motion to, account for if it did go ahead, what would he do? And so when Brexit, the vote actually happened, he was like, oh shit. I got to get my skates on, I believe when the vote went through, they estimated maybe a 5-year gap that it would take to, do all of the negotiations and have Brexit leave the EU officially. So my dad had 5 years to sort of look into what it would take to acquire Spanish nationality. And long story short, by the time Brexit came around, he still hadn't gotten it sorted. And he was met with lots of different challenges. In Spain, the way that they used to do things, a lot of paperwork. You have to have everything issued within 6 months. If you're from a foreign country, it needs to be apostilled. It needs to be translated. All these things that I've also had to go and do to get mine. And yeah, come the time of Brexit, he didn't have Spanish nationality. So he actually had to live as a foreigner under his spouse, or my stepmom, who was living in Spain as an Irish citizen, but part of the EU. Yeah, he was kind of treated like an outsider for a little while, even though that part of the world is somewhere that he's been, the majority of his early years. So it was kind of funny. But anyway, he got all of his ducks in a line finally and got all of his paperwork over the line, and his citizenship was granted sometime around in 2024. I don't actually know the date. I've got it somewhere. But it was on the later part of 2024. He actually came over to Australia and I got to see him and we were talking about it. And I was curious as to whether him gaining Spanish citizenship actually entitled me to it. And he said he didn't know. And he said, look, I'll talk to my cousin Pepito, who is Spanish born, been in Spain, knows the lay of the land, and he'll get some details for me. And then in early January, I heard from my dad and he said, look, Tom, Pepito seems to think that if you can talk to the Spanish consulate there in Sydney, you should be able to just tell them, my dad's just become a Spanish national. Now I would like to become a Spanish national. And when they responded to me, they said that I was eligible under the democratic memory law, or Ley de Memoria Democrática. So that set my journey of applying for Spanish citizenship into motion, and I was met with a lot of overwhelm, if I'm honest. So this is back in January of this year, 2025, and I'm going, holy hell, what is an apostille? What is a sworn translator? What is all this stuff that I have to do? I was so confused. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have ChatGPT. I probably wouldn't have gotten this over the line. Really, the hardest part was all of the documents that the consulate sent me were all in Spanish, which I then needed to translate. And then when I translated it, I realized that it's all written in legal terms. So I translated it from Spanish to English, but still complicated. And then using ChatGPT, it helped me, dumb it down and, put it into normal person text. So I finally got my head around everything that I needed. The birth certificates issued within the last 6 months, the apostilles, what even is an apostille, I had to get my head around that. Then I had to look at the consulate's website, find the sworn translator, which I'm happy to give the details to anyone if you're planning to go and, obtain your Spanish nationality. But getting all that documentation together was one part, and then actually submitting the application was the other. So I managed to get all the documentation together, I think within about 3 months. That's with understanding and actually executing on it. If I were to look at it now and condense it down, I could probably I could repeat the whole process and get the application ready and set to go within 3 weeks. But that's only after I've gone through all of the rigmarole of understanding the requirements and where I need to go and how much I need to pay and etc, etc. And I'm also happy to answer any questions for any other Aussies that might be in the position I was in. The democratic memory law is the law that I got in under, and most people know this law as Ley de Nietos, or the grandchild law. And what the democratic memory law aims to serve, or at a higher level, it's to right the wrongs of the Francoist dictatorship, where heaps of bad shit happened in Spain. And essentially part of the law that they've written in, it's only temporary for the citizenship part. So yes, there is an expiry date on when I could apply. Essentially, it's the government putting the hand out and saying, hey, look, under these provisions, anybody that meets this criteria can, apply for Spanish nationality, provided you can get all the documentation, which I did. And the provisional periods, I was so lucky with this because when my dad told me about it, he told me in December of 2024, right? And then when I started going through all the paperwork, I suddenly realized that the provisions that I would be applying under were temporary. So originally, when they released the democratic memory law, they had a 2-year gap or 2-year window where people could apply that met the criteria. So that was from, I believe, October 22 to October 24. I'm not too sure on the exact date, but it's definitely that period of time where the applications were open. And at the end of the 2-year period, the Spanish government actually said, no, we're actually going to extend it for a further year. So that'll make it 3, which brings us to today, where the provisions of the democratic memory law are going to expire in October of this year, 2025. So as I'm going through all the documentation and figuring out what I've got to do, I'm going, holy shit, not only do I have to do all of this, but there's a time frame. Like, I've got to get this over the line or submitted before October 2025. And not only that, I was doing this whole process for my sister as well. And because she's a married woman and had a name change, there was extra certificates and translations that I had to throw in there. So the pressure was really on. But by March, I was able to submit everything to the consulate, and so was my sister. And literally after we submitted the application successfully, all they do is send back an email and a calendar invite giving you an appointment at the consulate. So from March, I had to wait 3 months before I could even get an appointment. That was actually the longest bit. Now you might be thinking, well, hang on, you just said that you got it within 5 weeks. Yes, I did. I got it within 5 weeks of submitting the application, and I'll get to why I believe that is the case. And it's actually quite reassuring for other people that are going to be acquiring Spanish nationality going forward. But yeah, so from January to March, gathering the documentation and submitting it. In March, I was given an appointment from the consulate, and same with my sister. My appointment with them was on the 10th of June. My sister's was on the 24th of June. The June time came around, which was only a couple of months ago at the time of filming this. I took all my documents into the consulate. You have to take like a printed copy and also all of the originals. I submitted those. They gave me a signed bit of paper and they said, now all you have to do is wait. And from that date, they quoted me that I could be waiting up to 8 months to a year for the application to be processed. I really did not think I was going to be getting any Spanish birth certificate or any reply from them for quite a long time, until on the 16th of July, I got an email with a PDF attached containing my Spanish birth certificate, which when you get that, just for anybody that's not aware, once you get written into the Spanish registry, you're officially a Spaniard. So that's the first step in, confirmation. And this happened on the 16th of July. My appointment was on the 10th of June. So literally, if you extrapolate that out, that's 36 days, and it was approved. And I'm sitting there going like, what the hell? And my sister couldn't believe it either. She got really excited because she thought, well, I was only two weeks behind you. I'm obviously going to get mine soon. And interestingly enough, hers didn't come through as quickly. She ended up having to wait, I think, 2 months and 4 days. She was a little bit longer than I was. However, both of us were significantly quicker than the quoted 8 months. And bring it to the punchline of how I think this all occurred so quickly is when I did a bit more research on this, I found out that the Spanish government had actually been working on a digital civil registry platform, I think they call it, that allows for the printing of digital certificates that are officially signed and can be accepted rather than needing the paper copies of everything. What the initiative aims to do is specifically for cases like this, is to help speed up the process and give consulates and official government organizations the ability to receive documents digitally and verify them. This is part of the reason why historically this kind of stuff takes so long, because there's so many people, there's so many documents that are needed, there's so many people that need to look at them, and writing a person into a birth registry for a country is a big deal. It's actually a disservice for them to rush anything like this, so I completely understand. And with all the apostilles, like the legalization and the translation, they have to have everything lined up, because essentially what they're about to do is they're about to like make you a citizen of their country. So they want to know that you're legitimate, and they want to know that you meet the criteria that they have set in the law. So that's why they do it. But yeah, the digital platform system they've been working on is great. And when I looked at the launch date of it, right? So they began it in 2024 and the rollout of it was in July 2025. So I submitted all my documentation June 10, July 2025. They roll out this new system and voila, within 36 days of submitting that documentation, I got my digital birth certificate. And the digital birth certificate is also different to the one that my dad got. So like even the layout, everything, like the certificate itself just looks different. So I knew when I looked at this and then looked at the time frame, I was like, yeah, something else is up here, which caused me to go and do a heap more research. But yeah, that's exactly how I got Spanish citizenship in under 5 weeks. Thank God for the digital system that they rolled out. Thank God my dad got his citizenship when he did, and I learned about the democratic memory law when I did. Because if I didn't do that before October of this year, my chance to acquire this and, you know, essentially go and find a new part of myself wouldn't have been available. So it's really freaking cool. And what I'm going to be doing with this is I'm documenting the entire process, like all of the documents I had to get, the translations, the entire journey that I've taken so far of acquiring the nationality. And in a few days, I will be heading to Spain officially to see my dad. I'm going to be staying with him for a couple of weeks. And I'm also going for a trip to Italy. A friend of mine is getting married. So I've got lots of exciting stuff coming up in September. Probably won't be releasing a heap of stuff in September, but I'll be definitely capturing heaps of the moments, and I want to go and explore, you know, my Spanish heritage. I want to spend some time with my dad. I'm looking forward to it. And another great exciting thing about all of this is I did try to get my Spanish passport before I left. However, I couldn't get into the Spanish consulate so they could issue it on time. So what's really exciting is I'm actually going to get it when I'm in Spain. And to do that, I've had to make sure I've got all the relevant documentation there ready to go. But when I get there, I'll be able to go into the police office, which is where they do, you know, your D&I card and your passport. And I'll be getting all of that printed in my dad's hometown, and I am stoked. This is going to be a really fun project of mine. If you're just joining me now, make sure you follow along. I will be making a whole playlist dedicated to Spain in celebration of achieving this milestone. For anybody else that's eligible under the democratic memory law to apply, I would encourage you, like I said before, if I could do this process again, I reckon I could get it done in 3 weeks because of all of the stuff that I know how to do. It's just the ambiguity and not knowing what's what, or somebody to hold your hand, that causes all of the delays. So once you know what you're doing, it's fairly simple. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has in the comments section. Okay. Yeah, stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you for the next video. Looking forward to that, and I'll catch you later. Bye.